just start off by saying welcome and thank you so much for joining us today for our project launch, which is mapping circular economy adoption across South Africa. And this is really about building a national evidence base that helps us to understand what's actually happening on the ground in the private sector. And also just to premise it on that this project that Circular South Africa is doing is funded by the CSIR through funding made available by the DSTI and the DTIC, and is overseen by Circular Innovation South Africa and the National Cleaner Production Centre of South Africa. So just to get into the agenda today, we're going to start off with the welcome, and then we will be joined by Prof. Linda Godfrey from Circular Innovation South Africa, who will be briefly chatting to us. And then we'll also be joined by Lee from NCPC South Africa, who will talk to us about what's going on their front. And then me, I'm Gabriella. I am from Circular South Africa. I will be the host for this session, and I will speak to an overview of the project. And then my colleague, Christina, will be speaking to some of the insights that we've gained so far with our existing analysis of the case studies that we have. And then we'll also be joined by my other colleague, Mark, who will be speaking to 2 case studies that we'd like to share with you. After we go into that, we'll have a quick Q&A and then closing, and really looking forward to chatting to you all. Cool, thank you. And then just before we give Linda the platform, a little bit about Circular South Africa. We are an organization that amplifies the potential and value of the just circular economy in South Africa. And why a circular economy? Well, we all know that South Africa's extractive-based economy has led to resource depletion, social inequality, and environmental degradation. And the circular economy really provides South Africa with a regenerative alternative. And then really just quite briefly speaking to the fundamental principles, we all know the 3. It's designing out waste and pollution, keeping materials at their highest value, and regenerating natural systems. But at CSA, we've also added a 4th that we find extremely important for the context of South Africa, which is benefiting all members of society. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Prof. Linda. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Gabriella. Let me share my screen quickly and I can jump right in. And you can tell me if for any reason it's not showing or if it's not on full screen mode.
It's perfect.
It's well visible.
Lovely, thank you. So thanks very much for the opportunity to just give, I'm going to be very brief this morning. I think for any of the attendees online today, you might have joined the very lengthy session that we had, was it last month or February, March? I can't remember, this year's flying by too quickly, but we had a wonderful opportunity to actually present on the broader sort of the journey of the waste roadmap and the new circular economy strategy. So I don't want to repeat much.
Also had to let.
Oh, so getting to hear somebody else's conversation.
Because I started asking internal questions.
And so I don't want to repeat that. I really want to just provide the context for this particular project and why we're here this morning. So just to recap, government's white paper on science, technology and innovation recognized this opportunity of a circular economy as really a new source of economic growth for South Africa, for a new source of growth for a reindustrialized modern South Africa. And this led to the National Circular Economy Science, Technology and Innovation Strategy, which was approved by the DSTI towards the end of 2024. And the strategy has as its vision to produce a new science, technology and innovation to support an inclusive, just and climate resilient circular economy transition in South Africa. So what does that mean for why we are today? So one of the 5 enabling measures of that circular economy strategy is enabling implementation of a circular economy through business support, capacity building, and demonstration. So how do we harness the opportunity of science, technology, and innovation to support our private sector? Because I honestly do believe it's going to be our private sector, business, industry, small and large, that's going to drive the transition to a more circular economy, not government. Government's role is to create an enabling environment for that. And so one of the instruments that we've put in place to support this enabling measure is our demonstration fund. And the aim of the demonstration fund is to help the private sector to de-risk and to scale, to demonstrate circular interventions through a partnership with our national system of innovation. So through partnerships with our universities and our science councils. Because I honestly do believe that there's an urgency to transitioning to a circular economy. There's an urgency to scaling and replicating circular interventions, circular practices, circular business models. So I just very quickly wanted to give you a flavor of the kinds of projects that we're funding through our demonstration fund. And as I said, these are initiatives that are driven by the private sector. Many of these are small businesses. And it's around how do we just help them overcome that obstacle of proving concept in the field. These are sort of advanced TRL levels of 6, 7. But how do we showcase? And so we've had some opportunities. For example, there was the interlocking building blocks where we had the opportunity to actually build a house made out of this technology that used C&D and glass waste. We recently launched the project around using invasive alien biomass material to demonstrate this modular zero carbon, and in fact it's carbon negative roof and flooring system down in Elandskloof in the Western Cape. Water reclamation technologies. So a variety of different projects, but the common element in this is this element of innovation. It's around doing things differently with our waste streams, with our resources, whether it be primary or secondary resources. So this is a group of projects that are currently ongoing or have recently completed. Our next batch of projects which came into effect this year, again, we've expanded the portfolio even further. So looking very much at that regenerative element, the circular mass timber building system fits into that aspect. So using our biomass and natural resources in the construction sector, but also importantly, this element around remanufacturing. We know that a key element to the circular economy is this concept of value retention. So recycling essentially becomes the last option in a circular economy model. So how do we support repair, reuse, remanufacturing? And so I'm really excited about that new project that's come into our portfolio. Also looking at different kinds of feedstocks and materials. So we're really excited to see how we take these demonstration projects forward. And that means also having a better understanding of what is currently happening out there. So why we were so excited to partner with Circular South Africa on this particular project that we'll hear more about this morning was first of all to obtain a better understanding of the current level of adoption of circular innovations by our private sector and across the country, not just within our metropolitan areas, not just our big businesses, but really spread across the country. What innovative circular solutions are we seeing emerge? The second objective for us was to showcase and raise awareness around circular business practices. So very often people approach me and it's simply just, wow, I wasn't even aware that that was a business opportunity or a business model that is circular. So how do we showcase and raise awareness? And through these two first is how do we then build on this to support future collaboration. So how do we make our private sector aware of the fact that they can partner with our universities and science councils to help them to demonstrate, to help them to scale, to help them to replicate? We've got a network of over 150 scientists, engineers, technicians sitting at South African universities and science councils who are there and ready to help our private sector to drive a circular economy transition forward. So I'm really excited to see where this particular project goes, how we build on this, and how we bring in our broader community in business and industry to start to document, to showcase all of the great work that's already happening out there around circular interventions and circular business models. That's it from me. Thank you so much, Gabriela.
Thank you so much, Linda. I would love to hand over to Lee now. You are most welcome to share your screen.
Okay, thank you. I will just quickly switch on my camera and then right. You can just let me know if my slides are visible. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for hosting us in the session today. Also, very excited about this partnership with CSA, and also I think in terms of what the NCPC has been doing and our growing focus and support to industry on circular economy and circular economy activities. This is quite a exciting partnership. So I think maybe just to give everybody a bit of a background about who the NCPC is. We are a initiative of the DTIC. We are hosted at CSIR, and for most of our existence, our focus has been on supporting industry to improve their competitiveness through circular economy, while what we now refer to more and more as circular economy activities, but also embedded within resource efficient and cleaner production methodologies. And what we're trying to highlight through this is in introducing and supporting industry with capacity, and also the information to understand the impact on the environment, how they can reduce that, and taking a very pragmatic approach towards transitioning or taking up the opportunities and circular economy opportunities that exist within the industries. So what we've learned over the years has been, and as our mission has evolved, because about 20 years or so ago when NCPC was established, the focus of the center was very much on creating awareness around reducing environmental impact. And now we've also over the years started introducing issues and programs, activities, focus areas around sustainability practices through RECP, and then ultimately creating what we now refer to and supporting a low carbon economy, low carbon circular economy. And so we believe that a lot of our activities, a lot of what we do in industry is really for us captured around through our services that we provide to industry, and we are able to provide services to industry through our funding that we receive from DTIC, as well as through other donor-funded projects. And I'll share a bit more on those donor-funded projects and how that is also more and more moving towards strengthening circular economy activities in industry and the circular economy perspective. But ultimately, our main services and the services we offer to industry and strengthening that relationship with industry really evolves around identifying opportunities for savings and being more efficient. And we do this through technical assistance. We do this through capacity building and training through our different training programs. We do this through supporting implementation of technical interventions and technical solutions to improve the impact on the environment, but also just looking at the value chains of different sectors and how that can be improved. We have quite a strong focus on looking at how waste is dealt with within industry, and particularly looking at industrial symbiosis and using that as an approach to address waste streams. We've also now very actively started developing and providing support around developing of bankable business cases for not just energy funding, but a lot of other funding that's available, and supporting industry and companies to be able to identify where those opportunities are, and of course measuring reporting on carbon emissions and decarbonization is a core part of what we do. So a lot of our interaction with industry is embedded within our services that we offer. And out of this, there is a number of case studies, and I always make the comment that although we provide grant funding support or services at a very low cost, we often seem to highlight that our payment is in case studies. If we develop case studies from what we do, and we highlight that the impact in industry through case studies, it spreads not just the message, but also showcases what is possible. So I'm going to jump through a couple of things fairly quickly. This is just to share some of the realized savings, and this is captured through, again, a number of case studies that we developed through the course of our activities. Our training and skills development is quite extensive, and this is a key part of what we do, because we believe that we have to strengthen the ongoing implementation and activity within industry through development of courses and development of capacity within industry. And in our recently, well, when I say recent, it's about 2 years or so ago, we've redeveloped and revamped our training on resource efficient and cleaner production, and one of the courses or modules that we have deals specifically with circular economy and how that is supported through the various concepts and principles that we apply. So this is something that we believe will continue to grow, and there's been some very good feedback on that. I think in addition to this, and I think this is where the alignment and the partnership with CSA is so strong and really valuable, is the NCPC also has a very strong focus on developing of free tools and guidelines, industry guides, case studies. And so we, through all of our activities, we develop constantly. We want to develop case studies. We showcase what has happened. We develop tools and different guidelines to support industry. And we believe that within the circular economy, and the activities around circular economy and supporting that in industry, this is a very good way of supporting what takes place and capturing what takes place and happens within industry. So briefly to touch on our programs and projects, we have a number of activities and projects that we are implementing. At the moment, we still continue with our extensive activities on industrial symbiosis, which is where we deal with a number of companies that want to address the waste streams that they have within their operations, and also, excuse me, looking for opportunities and solutions. This is where we find the biggest interest and request for circular economy solutions. It's a little bit of background noise. Okay. So around circular economy solutions and technology, this is what we pick up mainly through our industrial symbiosis program activities, and also in our partner funded projects. There's a number of these long-term funded projects that targets the promotion of circular economy and embedding of circular economy activities within that. So under the Global Eco-Industrial Parks program, just to give you an idea, this concept also incorporates the application of industrial synergies that speaks to circular economy solutions and technology that we're currently implementing, and in different industrial parks and special economic zones across the country. Then we also have currently a project that we implementing targeting the textiles and garment sector, promoting of the circular economy in the textile and garment sector. And we are in the process of developing in partnership with United Nations Industrial Development Organization a project on climate and biodiversity action through circular economy solutions that we are hopeful will be successful in the with the project partners that we're submitting to. And then we've worked with the CSR Circular Innovation South Africa on the South African Circular Manufacturing Initiative, and we've been working closely with Prof. Linda Godfrey around the establishment of the Circular Manufacturing Initiative. So those are just to give an idea of what we're doing. I'll go through some of the other slides fairly quickly, but in terms of industrial symbiosis, we're working closely with a number of provincial governments to further advocate and drive the uptake of industrial symbiosis activities across the country. And also out of this, we have a number of case studies that's being developed, and we believe that there's still quite a bit of opportunity, and I think more that can be done and picked up in terms of these case studies. So on our website, we have a number of synergy case studies that's been developed. In terms of the Circular Manufacturing Initiative, as I mentioned, working closely with Circular Innovation South Africa, the initiative funded by the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. NCPC has been working with the establishment, or working on the establishment of the Circular Manufacturing Initiative, and during 2025, we have worked with the CSR in engaging with stakeholders in the manufacturing sector to identify the priorities for a number of sectors, and they focus on the circular economy, and these priority areas that were identified under the Circular Manufacturing Initiative. We have had the opportunity to engage a number of sector players to really look and understand and give inputs into the opportunities for innovation and technology around these priority areas, to strengthen circular solutions and technology within sectors like the textile sector, automotive, and food and beverages sector that supports to really align with what's happening in those sectors. So this has been a very a very positive engagement with industry, and I think most importantly, to support circular economy pathways that we believe is possible. I think lastly, I want to touch on the industrial spaces, and this is an area that the NCPC's work is growing in. We currently have 4 very strategic projects, multi-year projects that we are implementing that targets industrial parks and special economic zones. And as I mentioned earlier, the Global Eco-Industrial Parks program, particularly that concept is built on industrial synergies, on circular economy principles, and coming up with solutions within industrial spaces to create a circular and circular economy through different technical and infrastructure interventions. Then lastly, through all of these activities, the issue of access to finance has become a very big focus, and we have been supporting our networks and industry companies that we're working with, SMEs in different sectors, with creating those linkages to financing opportunities. We've done that through a couple of tools we've developed for our Green Finance Hub, but ultimately to accelerate access to financing for different projects and for implementation based on feasibility, pre-feasibility studies that we support them with. And this is done through our financier database that we currently in the process of updating, as well as through a guideline that we developed on how to use certain business cases, developing business cases, and capacity building that supports this guideline as well. And I think from this perspective, through this, we've also, and through a number of our projects that I've mentioned, we've certainly highlighted the opportunity and the vast opportunities for circular economy interventions, developing of bankable business proposals for financing, and continued skills development for doing that in industry. Thank you very much, and I hope that was not too much time.
Thank you so much, Lee. That was amazing. It's quite incredible to see how much the NCPC is doing, and I think it just validates having CISA and NCPC as partners for this case study project. I think it really strengthens the case for building up a very credible national case study database. I think we're going to move on to the actual project. Thanks, Christina. So I'm just going to talk to you about what this project is and why it exists. So it's really focused on mapping circular economy adoption across South Africa, and there's a very strong emphasis on understanding circular economy practices within the private sector. So we know that circular economy activities happening across the country, but we don't necessarily have a clear picture of where, at what scale, and in which sectors with a full overview. So the project has 2 components. The first one is work package 1, which is to analyze and extend. And this is where we will be analyzing and extending the existing case study database, which is hosted by Circular South Africa. So we currently have 278 existing case studies, and currently we're analyzing them, and the next step is to extend by at least 50 new case studies. I'm quite sure with all the people in the room today, it will be well over 50 case studies. And even just looking at what Prof. Linda and Lee presented today, there are many more to add. The second work package is to map and communicate, and this is where we will be building a publicly accessible spatial map so that anyone can see and engage with those case studies visually. So it's really going to reveal the geographic distribution, sector concentration, and innovation patterns across South Africa. And not only the case studies, but to also speak to the enabling environment. So who are the organizations, the funders, investors, etc., that enable circular economy adoption across the country? And then we now go into the why. So why does it matter that we build a case for the circular economy? This is really to create a credible national evidence base, which is critical for creating the conditions that enable a broader circular economy adoption. And there are three reasons for that. The first is to obviously create the enabling environment. So this is for government, funders, and support organizations to design effective programs. They need verified data on what businesses are actually doing in order to do that. You can't design a support structure around circular innovation if you don't know what's already there. The second is accelerating further adoption. So when businesses can see that other companies in their sector or in their region are succeeding in applying circular models, it reduces the perceived risk of doing so themselves. And that's something that Linda mentioned as well. And then the third is about connecting the system. And this is about creating a shared reference point for all the sectors, so private sector, government, funders, and civil society, to identify the gaps, the opportunities, align our efforts, and direct investment where it's needed the most. And then to just chat briefly about why the private sector specifically matters here. I think this is really where businesses take circular economy theory into practice, and business really drives implementation. It generates the evidence for scaling, and it proves what actually works in different contexts across the country. For companies, the case is increasingly compelling. So circular models reduce input costs, they open up new revenue streams, and build resilience by reducing dependency on virgin materials. But beyond the business case, there's also the policy and strategy alignment. So Linda had mentioned DSTI strategy. We've got NCPC with as well as special economic zones and eco-industrial parks. And then we've also got on a global level the CBAM and EU ESPR. So that's the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and then the Eco Design for Sustainable Products Regulation. So those are also in place, which means that private sector adoption is not just good practice, but it's increasingly a policy and market necessity. I'm going to quickly hand over to Mark now to speak to two South African case studies that we've got in business. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Gabby. So let's look at two of the case studies that we have part of our network. The first one we're looking at is Sealand Gear, which is a good example of circular materials. They use recycled materials and eco-nylon regenerated nylon that can be easily recycled, and they use this to create all the apparel and bags that they sell. They also empower local seamstress by hiring local and also acknowledging the people that actually create the products that they sell by putting their names inside of all the products, which is a great way to empower a seamstress in South Africa. And they also pay them above average wage, so they're able to sustain themselves and also be motivated to work for Sealand. Some of the circular principles and elements that you see in the project is keeping materials at their highest value and also benefiting all members of society. So look at the next one. The second case we're looking at is house harvest. So house harvest is an excellent example of smart agriculture. House harvest uses aquaponic sites that bridges the relationship between water, food, and energy by creating a closed loop ecosystem to grow organic food. And this is also to decrease the scarcity of food and water in South Africa. On their website, you're able to buy some of this produce, whether it's the food that they make. They also make some incredible sauces with the food that they grow, as well as the fish that they use for nutrients to grow the food. So it's a holistic, closed, circular, closed loop that they create. And on their website, they also share their journey from coming from conventional agriculture, but because of climate change and water scarcity, they are then moved to a regenerative, circular system. And the elements and principles that they use is designing out waste and pollution, keeping materials at their highest value, and also regenerating natural systems and benefiting all members of society. That's just a little bit about the case studies that we have at Circular South Africa.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Christina.
Mark.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina. Very excited to be here sharing, just some kind of a little bit of an update about where we are at in the project process. And then I will also share some preliminary insights that we've gathered so far. So as Gabby has mentioned earlier, CSA did have an existing case study database of 278 case studies. But yeah, a lot of that needed to be cleaned up and standardized in order to actually perform an analysis on that. So we spent a little bit of time just reviewing the existing database, cleaning things up, and getting it ready for an analysis. And then we did also add a variety of new data fields, specifically kind of focusing in on economic factors. So one of the things that we were curious to find out was whether the case studies were a circular business model or an initiative or project. And the difference between those two is basically a circular business model would mean that this kind of project or business relies and is dependent on circular economy activities. And without that, the project or business would be very different or wouldn't exist at all. And then a circular economy initiative or project is more of like a side kind of activity or project within an otherwise kind of standard linear kind of business model. So that was a classification that we were interested in finding out more about. And then we were also curious to just look into some economic resiliency metrics. So for that, we decided to look at the number of years operational to kind of get a better sense of how sustainable and long-term these case studies are. And then to also look at the organizational size or the number of employees. And then over and above that, we also wanted to distinguish between the types of entities. So we classified between private sector, public sector, NGOs, and academia. And then we also included whether the case study was a business-to-business project or a business-to-consumer project. So we have completed that initial round. And we have started seeing some insights coming forward, but I think there'll be over the course of the year, we will continue to refine these insights, unpack them, and also interpret them. So we haven't sort of gotten onto the question of why some of these patterns are emerging, but that will, get more interesting over the course of the year. And then, we'll also then be doing a national campaign to try and get a fuller and more representative database. So that's a lot of why we're doing this launch as well, to try and raise awareness that we're doing this and and call for people to please submit their case studies so that we can include that in our analysis over the course of the year. And then most of this analysis is kind of based on quantitative information, but we also wanted to get a slightly more nuanced and qualitative perspective. So we will be doing at least 30 more in-depth interviews with selected case studies. And how we will decide that, I think we want to get a nice kind of geographic distribution. So yeah, maybe picking a case study from each province. We also want to get kind of a diversified sector understanding, as well as perhaps the actual size of the organization. So it could be interesting to talk to very small kind of micro enterprises, as well as some much larger companies. And there might be some differing information there that would reveal some insights. Yeah, so this year we will be continuing to gather a lot more information, and then we will do a far more in-depth analysis. We'll clarify some more specific research questions, and then also get more into the slightly more complicated relational kind of insights. So I think more of the juicy and curious insights will come out over the course of the year, but we have started seeing some patterns which we will share with you today. And then, as Gabby mentioned, we are going to be putting all of these case studies into an interactive visual map. So that will come later in the year as well. Then I did just want to acknowledge the limitations of this study. We certainly don't claim that this is a complete or accurate representation of South Africa as a whole. What we've done so far was an existing case study. So it wasn't done through a national campaign. A lot of these case studies were manually inputted. So there's, I guess, some element of interpretation there as well. And then we also did want to acknowledge that there's probably a lot more circular activity happening in the informal sector that isn't captured here. All of this information was quite reliant on these case studies being publicly available and having information online. So there's obviously a lot more going on than what's available on the web. And we just wanted to acknowledge that. Yeah, and then I will just share some preliminary insights, and these are quite high level, but we thought they were kind of interesting to share at this point. So I think as kind of Linda mentioned, that the private sector is the driver of a lot of circular economy activity, and this has definitely come through in the data, with the private sector accounting for just over 70% of the total case studies. And then we have the NGO or non-profit sector taking up about 13%, and then the public sector and academia are, yeah, quite low comparatively. But I think this also does make sense. And then there was, we were quite surprised by some of the outcomes and patterns. So I would be interested to hear from you all, and maybe you could just take a very quick 30 seconds to type in the chat which key elements of circular economy would you expect to be the most common, whether that's key products and materials in use, benefiting all members of society, creating collaborations and partnerships. Yeah, if everyone could just type what you expect, and then I'll reveal the insights, and maybe you might be surprised or not. Okay, so this was the result. So if we look at all of the kinds of circular economy activity, the most common one was using waste as a resource. And I think this does kind of make sense given that South Africa is largely a recycling economy. But also, as Linda said, recycling should ideally be the last step. So perhaps this is also a call for South Africa to look higher up in the value chain and think about where there might be other opportunities to focus less on waste, but perhaps more on other kinds of circular economy strategies. And I think it's also interesting to see that the enhancing and advancing knowledge and capacity is quite low. So this is also perhaps an area that needs a bit more attention and focus. And then this was the kind of breakdown between the circular economy businesses versus initiatives, which I distinguished earlier. And I think we were expecting more of the case studies to actually be side projects or initiatives rather than circular economy actually being the core business model. But we were quite surprised to see that actually circular economy business models came out higher than initiatives or projects. And then some slightly more nuanced insights here was that sectors such as mining tend toward offset CE initiatives or projects rather than core business transformations, which perhaps makes sense in well-established, kind of entrenched sectors. And then when it comes to sectors like agriculture, it seems like they are more likely to implement businesses that actually have circular economy at the core. And then given that there was a particular interest in the private sector, we also had a look at the business to business versus business to consumer sort of breakdown. And it was quite interesting to see that business to business was accounted for 70%, whereas business to consumer accounted for 31%. And if we look specifically at the private sector case studies, we looked at the sector breakdown, and it was revealed that manufacturing came out certainly the highest, and then that was followed by agriculture and mobility. And then we also took a closer look specifically at the case studies that had a circular economy core business model. So within that subgroup, we also had a look at the prominent sectors within that. And there was a slight difference here between the two where within the private sector, manufacturing came out the highest. And then within circular economy business models, agriculture came out the highest. And then manufacturing. So there's clearly a lot of quite successful initiatives and projects and companies that have core circular economy business models within the agricultural sector. I think it's quite interesting to note that energy, water, the built environment are comparatively quite low. And I think given South Africa's energy and water crisis, perhaps some more attention and opportunities might lie in that space. And then again, if we are looking specifically at the circular economy business model case studies, we looked at the circular economy activities or key elements and looked at how those were distributed. And again, we see using waste as a resource is coming out the highest. So I think perhaps these other circular economy activities or strategies might be overlooked, or there might be more opportunities there. And then we did also start looking at the geographic breakdown. And I think this was largely kind of expected how these results were. They sort of follow the economic patterns in the country more broadly. So we have Gauteng coming out with accounting for about 40% of the total database, followed by the Western Cape and then KwaZulu-Natal. But I think there's a bit of a gap in our data in some of the other provinces where I'm sure there is more going on that we just actually don't have recorded. So I think we'll try and get a more distributed kind of geographical lens, and would love to get more case studies submitted from other provinces like the Free State, Northern Cape, and Northwest, because there's a lot going on there. So there's surely a lot more circular economy activities happening. And then we looked at the top 2 provinces and how those sectors break down. And within the Gauteng, manufacturing and agriculture came out the highest. But again, given the pressures that Gauteng is facing in terms of energy and water, we were quite surprised to see how few circular economy activities were in those sectors. And there might be explored opportunities in these sectors. And then within the Western Cape, we had agriculture coming out quite high, sort of again a bit to be expected given the Western Cape's agricultural activities. But again, we thought that the pressures that the Western Cape is facing in terms of housing, the built environment, and traffic, that perhaps are more opportunities do exist within mobility as well as the built environment. Sorry, I got a little bit rushed there. I'm just seeing we're very short on time, but those are some preliminary insights that we've gathered so far. But we'll stop there and move on to a Q&A. Yeah, well, I was curious to hear from everyone if there was something that surprised you, if you have any follow-up questions, or if we think about this database, what kinds of insights are you really interested in finding out? So what other kinds of analyses could we do, and what's of interest? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christina.
Debbie, do you see the questions in the Q&A?
The Q&A. Okay, I see one from Haro, which is
Yeah.
in your database, do you include the SIC code, or where symbiosis involves business from more than one sector, the SIC codes? Christina, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Sure. I think I'm not too sure what the first thing actually referred to, but on the second point there, I think what we would like to do is also, right now we just have the kind of primary industry or sector, and I think we would like to also do a potentially secondary, maybe even third kind of subsectors to get a more nuanced understanding there.
Harold's got his hand up.
Yeah, you're welcome to unmute yourself, Haro.
Okay, no, thanks very much. In industrial ecology, people often work, data driven, and working to standardized codes, just allows one database to speak to another one in the future. So these are useful things to have, rather than simply the word agriculture, but to actually know whether it's horticulture, the more detailed ones. And these are standard things that economists and data sets in the economic world use all the time. So just to encourage you to make it compatible.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And then there's a comment/question from Michelle, which is additional data fields can drive insights, but to drive circular economy at scale, we need to start joining the dots. Is that a part of the project? And then also just another statement saying, I would also be keen to understand how the informal examples can be adequately captured.
Yeah, I mean, I think the informal part is quite a tricky thing, and I'm not too sure how we can address that, but I think it's definitely worth some thought. And then on your first point, I think over the course of the year, the insights that we currently have were mostly looking, at one column, but I think we're going to get into far more relational comparisons and analyses. So that will reveal, more kind of cross-column insights that I think will be far more interesting than just looking at, one topic alone.
Thank you. And then I see Ntabaleng has their hand raised. You're welcome to unmute.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
The question I have actually is more on NCPC and CSIR, if they do have programs like incubator or accelerator programs where they can teach businesses more about circular economy, because I've been trying to search maybe short courses or courses that one can do that are based on either circular economy or industrial symbiosis, and I've actually struggled to get any. Because the reason I'm asking is because the business that we do is more on circular economy as the model of our business. So we assist mainly your private sector to create systems, but we have been actually, I would say, struggling because one company, it's not the same to the next. So we don't necessarily have a system, a standard system that we can say this is what we use to can be able to assist clients, or in terms of either collaboration or the industrial ecosystem, to create industrial ecosystem so that we know, we take this waste from this to that one. So if one can get assistance from in that perspective, I think we would highly appreciate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'd just like to mention, I'm not sure if you know, but we at Circular South Africa, we've just launched our own online short course on the introduction to the fundamentals of the circular economy, and it speaks specifically to South Africa. So maybe just worth checking that out, but you're also welcome to pop me an email and let me know the specifics that you're looking for, and I can also refer you to others. Thank you. And then I was wondering.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. And then I was wondering if maybe Linda wanted to jump in, and I wanted to see if you had any comments or insights on the data that came up.
Specifically the presentation or the recent question?
The presentation.
So yeah, I think obviously it's the initial findings. We've still got quite a journey ahead of ourselves. So it's really exciting to see what's there so far. And also, I think just the number of people that are on the webinar today highlights the importance, I think, of starting to showcase more broadly. I know that when our circular initiatives, Lee is on our manufacturing. I don't know if Wayne is perhaps on, he's from our circular agriculture initiative. But I know that they also, agriculture had engagements around the country, and we were really, really surprised and heartened to see the number of activities and initiatives happening around the country. So part of me also feels like I want to get out of my office and get in a car and just drive around the country and speak to more people and see what they're doing, because there's a lot happening there. And I think we're just starting to scratch the surface now with some of the case studies that we've got. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to where this goes. I think the data that we're seeing here makes absolute sense given the current level of understanding and adoption. I know there have been questions raised around the informal sector, and I agree it's something that I think, we'd love to look into, but obviously this very specific terms of reference that we've given to CSA is to look more on the formal sector side and formal business, because obviously we're wanting to see how we link that with innovation and our innovation systems and global competitiveness of our business. So yeah, really exciting, and thanks for the work that's been done so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. And then I do see that we're just a bit past our time. So I just wanted to say that just right here on the end, we really, really encourage you, if you are a business or part of the private sector, to please submit your case study. You can use it with the QR code over there. You'll also be getting an email with us post-webinar with the link. It's on our website to submit your case study. If you are, you know, a researcher, an ecosystem stakeholder, a partner, and are interested in this and want to get involved, please email either me or Christina. We would love to chat to you about this and grow this national case study database. And with that, I think I'll give Hloni the mic. You can unmute yourself and then we'll close off the session.
Can you hear me? Thanks for the opportunity. Now,
Yes.
I wanted to find out, obviously, in terms of assisting you in compiling that database, because what I'm doing currently is that we work with wood. We obviously recycle that into pallets and some furniture. The plan is to obviously expand into areas such as tire recycling. We know the register story, what happened, and I think we want to attempt something one more time. We won't wait for government. Now, on the issue of compiling case studies, I would be willing to probably help, because one of my initiatives is to try to encourage as many people as possible who are unemployed to do something in the secular space, because I keep telling them that it's not only about recycling. There's manufacturing, there's a lot of things that are happening in that space. And maybe I can assist in terms of because I've got a YouTube channel that I'm using. The focus is on local businesses and all that. And I've got some of the people I'm obviously engaging with. So I will probably be able to reach out to you and discuss some of the things.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's great. I'd love to chat to you a bit. So just pop me an email, or I've got your information, so I'll get in touch with you and we can chat about what we can do together. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining this session, and looking forward to engaging with you all further. And yeah, really excited to see how this project takes shape. Yeah, and hope to chat to you all quite soon, and have a beautiful weekend and public holiday. Enjoy all your time. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.